Hey, as I'm getting ready to announce my next game, I'm something that's a bit of a blocker for me is that the last couple of times I've announced something, I I haven't managed to follow through on it, and this is a different situation. This one I've gotten a lot further along before I'm at that point, but um, yeah, I just thought like it will be helpful for me to talk through why that happened, why it went differently from how I expected. So, start of last year, I I had been improving from my um, health situation, but um, I was still struggling. But I had started working on things again, and I announced that I was going to do a sequel to Single Pash, which I wanted to do bigger, higher production values, um, reach more people than the original had, because it's a great game. It's recognized as a great game by people who know what's what, but it just hasn't reached a lot of people. I only had money to live on for a few months at that point, and so I didn't have the resources to actually do a bigger, better version. Um, I didn't even have the resources to spend as long as I had on the original, and yeah, so I hadn't figured that out yet. I was thinking of trying to get funding, um, maybe from publishers and things like that. But it's a difficult game to pitch to publishers because it's a sequel of a sort, and they will tend to just look at the performance of the original as a indicator of how it's expected to do. So that's I believe that something can be done to turn that around, but they will not always do that. For similar reasons, it's a difficult game to crowdfund because while it's fervently loved by its players, they are few. Yeah, so I was trying to feel out how I was going to do that, and shortly after announcing it, I was contacted by a company that their thing was kind of finding indie developers who've been making games that are well received in the community and providing the funding to do a version with higher production values and reach a wider audience. Like, exactly like a perfect fit. And they proposed to fund it like $500,000 to $1 million, which like on a personal scale is a huge amount of money. But when you look at like how much it costs to pay professionals, like the fact that the cost of employing someone is more than their salary, and you multiply it by number of people and time, like that's how much games cost. A lot of games cost more than that. But yeah, like that would be amazing and just solve most of my problems. And they were credible. Like they had recommendations from people who I had good reason to trust. So yeah, we talked, and they seemed competent and interested. They were excited about the ideas I had for how, because like a lot of. So let's unpack a little this term production value, because I was using this term at the time, but I think I'm going to stop using it because it's a little bit disingenuous. It's like if a politician says they want to promote family values, like families are great, values are great, but persecuting homosexuals isn't, and like they're trying to sneak one in under the guise of the other, and things like that. So production values, if you look at how the term's used, literally everything it means is money spent on the game. It's a code for a budget. Like if they'd meant craftsmanship, they would have said craftsmanship. If they'd meant care and love and heart put into the game, they would have said those things. Production values. But like production values was literally what money spent on the game was literally what I wanted. So the term production values, it's a bit sneaky, like saying values. It's like trying to make you feel like this is how you show that you value the game. Like this is like it's trying to feel like putting care into it, but like the game's already had care and good craftsmanship put into it. What I wanted to put into it was money, and yeah, here was an opportunity to do that. But a lot of games with high production values, i.e. a lot of money spent on them, are tacky as anything. And yeah, so I had some ideas of how I was going to make something that was, like what a lot of people say they appreciate about my games is the way they feel like an integrated whole. And yeah, I had ideas how to make something that felt good and holistic despite having more money spent on it. Which like it shouldn't be a despite, but like in practice it sometimes is. And yeah, so I had these ideas and they were responsive and supportive. That we seem to be on very much the same page. And so I spent a few months like believing that this was like the most likely thing to happen because it was good and made sense, and was working and planning how I was going to do that at that scale, and that took pretty much all the capacity I had to work during those months. And then they turned around and said that they didn't actually want to fund it at this time, which like was completely within their rights. Like we didn't have a agreement or anything. We were working towards one. It was disappointing, obviously. It also put me in quite a pickle because, like I said, I had at the start of the time I've talked about, I had money to live on for a few months. Those months had now passed, and I needed money right then. And they came through for me. They offered a much smaller budget for a much smaller game. It felt like a little bit of a awkward compromise because, like that like I said, their kind of what they'd said was that their goal was to do bigger budget post-indie games, and what I wanted was more stability and more time to recover so that I'd be able to do better work. And presumably they would want me to be doing the best work that I could be. So like, yeah, it didn't seem like actually the best thing from any side, but it was what they internally were able to agree to and offer. And like it came with reasonable terms. Like I said, I had good reason to trust them, and they said good things about respecting my health and my creative voice, and like I literally needed money to eat that month. So yeah, of course, I took the offer and started working on a new game. And at first it went really well. Like having money makes a huge difference. I was able to have an office space to work in, which like just because I used to always just work from home, and that was great, but with children it had become too, like it wasn't an environment I could work in anymore. And just being able to buy a meal, like and not have to worry about that, it really helps one to get down to work. So I was working, I had a promising prototype and had a good relationship with them. They were smart. They offered, they understood where I was going and made feedback that was pointed, helped me clarify the direction for it to go in. It was good. And so like, yeah, like the fact that it was a small thing, and I was having to, yeah, the only issue really was that I was having to work more hours sooner than I really would have liked to be doing for my what I was seeing as my course of recovery. But I was managing. It was being okay, and it was looking like it was a promising relationship. And they, at that point, they were interested in it being an ongoing relationship, and so like the bigger game was still a possibility on the horizon. But not very far into that project, they changed management. At first, I didn't think that would really affect me at all, because like, the management's up there, but the people I was working with day to day were, from the information I received at the time, staying the same. The values of the organisation, from the information I had at the time, were staying the same. And I was just head down working on the project. But over time it became apparent that something had changed. Now, obviously I have to be slightly careful telling this story because I signed a confidentiality agreement. I'm not going to give any information that is confidential to them. So like the fun way to tell this would be to like quote things that people said and stuff, but it's like, no, I will respect that. I will just give as brief a summary as possible. Everything that was verbally discussed but was not explicitly in the contract was gone back on. Get things in print. Like if things are part of the deal, make sure they're actually in print. Some of these things I had been trying to get into the contract, but you know, like I said, I needed the money that month, so when there was some pushback from the person who then became the manager, I didn't keep pushing for it. Yeah, there was some attempt to go back on things that were explicitly in the contract. I just without reference to anything, I want to say, like, if there is considered to be an ambiguity in the text of a contract, the proper thing to do is to mutually discuss what the understood interpretations were and come to a new agreement. It is not the right of any one party to unilaterally impose an interpretation because they feel that there is sufficient ambiguity to do so. There were attempts to convince me that I had agreed to further things that were not in the contract and had not been previously discussed. The term people use on the internet these days is gaslighting, like an attempt to... It comes from an old movie which I haven't seen, but as I understand it, it's attempting to undermine someone's sense of reality, to convince them that they have their perceptions of the world are false. Anyway, yeah, just attempting to convince me that I had agreed to things that I no way had agreed to. Brief summary. And it turned out that a lot of the people I talked to originally were no longer anywhere near. Which, I only found out in confusing bits and pieces because there was a lack of honesty and transparency. Yeah, I won't go into too many details, but they ended the contract. To their credit, they honoured the exit clause, paying me what I was due up to that point in the project, and that plus the Patreon money is what we've stretched out to live on now, plus a small amount of child support from the government, but it's not much here. At first, I continued working on that game. I was moving forward with it. I still owned the rights to it. There seemed no reason not to, just because they didn't want it. The budget would be slightly smaller. The time I was expecting to take on it had increased because of stress around everything that had been going on. Stress is the biggest thing I found that triggers my chronic fatigue. So at that point, I did start having more serious symptoms for a while, but with some rest they went away. But yeah, I didn't have enough left to finish it as planned. But more to the point, I had lost my momentum. I had lost my faith in the project. It takes a lot of confidence to build something out of nothing. You have to believe in what you're doing, and these responses I was getting from other people, which, I know they weren't actually about me or the project itself. It was just whatever they had going on internally. But having that directed at the project, I was doing good work. And I had hoped that it would be clear enough that I was doing good work, that even though they had stuff going on, that it was clear that this was it was in the end a very low investment for them, and it just seems like such a bad move. When you've put that money in and it's going well, and there's not much money left to put in until there's a finished product that you can sell. Why would you? Yeah. Anyway, so I got gaslit, like, not necessarily intentionally. Like, it's difficult when you're talking about these kind of things that are called abuse, that when abuse happens in most situations, it's not because someone is schemingly intending to abuse you. It's that they have their stuff going on that is disrupting them, and they're disrespecting you. Like, abuse never happens without disrespect. So, like, there's that. But if you want to not abuse someone, make sure you're respecting them. That's a safe strategy. Yeah, so like, I was working on the game. I felt like I was producing good work. I thought what I was doing made sense. Tara, my wife, has been with me through my whole game professional career, and she's seen how I've been working on all these other games, and her feedback, just based on how I was looking, was that I was working like Michael working on a game that is eventually good. Like when I was working on Corrupt, like when I was working on 868 Hack, this is Michael working. It didn't look to her like when I was unclear of direction, and it definitely didn't look to her like when I was in the depths of my sickness, 2020, 2021. So it really helped that I had that foundation, giving feedback that I was on the right track, but I had other people who, like, I know had less idea, giving different things, and that so, like, usually I have a strong enough grasp on reality that I would not be disrupted by this, but I had a major health crisis, which included mental health symptoms. Like, in 2020 and early 2021, I was not thinking clearly. I could not concentrate. My short-term memory didn't work. I made basic logical errors. My brain did not work, and that's scary. That's scary. I didn't know if I would ever be able to work again. I didn't, like, even aside from my body not working for me, that I didn't have the energy to physically do things. I could not think, and I'm not given to despair. I was just getting through each day, and I have recovered very well, and that has not come to pass. I am working again, and the game I'm working on now is there. But yeah, I had been in that state, and I wasn't sure. So when I had these different responses from people, yes, I doubted my perception of reality, because I knew that my mental faculties were not reliable. Had recently not been reliable, and I still wasn't completely sure of their present condition. Yeah, so working through that, I trust Tara's perception of the time, and I trust my own perception of the time, which was that it was good work. So like, I will come back to that project at some point, but it's a lot that I've needed to untangle around it. Should I just go back to the Cinco Pausch project? It still would need funds, more than I had, and like the whole experience around that. So again, a lot to untangle. And yeah, like now, as I said a couple of videos ago, I'm actually seeing it as a positive that I'm in my workshop, like Mind Palacefully. I have these different projects on the shelf that I can take bits from and come back to, and it's a time. And a lot of bits from the Single Pouch project have ended up in this project because they were a better fit for this one. And that, as I'm taking bits out of that for this one, like implicitly I'm refining that one to be more purely what it is, even though I'm not working on it. Like, it's wonderful. But yeah, so I'm doing great. My work is doing great. I'm almost out of money again, and don't have someone on the horizon promising me vaguely offering me vast sums. So hopefully it works out when I quite soon open the crowdfunder. But yeah, that's the best version of that I can tell right now. And it's come in under half an hour. So like, yeah, the first time I tried it was just like 55 minutes. I was just like confused, but like, yeah. Thanks for listening. Be careful of corporate entities, because they don't function like a human mind. It's a really common corporate strategy to start doing one thing, which is good and nice and builds goodwill, and to switch tracks once the goodwill is there to exploit it. And the really insidious thing I've seen is that the people on the goodwill building track can 100% believe in what they're doing. And it's someone else behind and above in the shady board, invest, whatever, who knows, then takes them out, puts someone else in, changes the track that it's on, and it's now a different entity just wearing the husk of what came before. And people don't necessarily realize for a while. Yeah, so always trust people. People are great. Look at individual people and beware of organizations. I think that's the world we live in. But yeah, I've learnt a bunch through this. I've learnt about myself. I trust myself more. I've discovered that I'm really good to work with. Yeah, because I like when they wanted to end it, I had a bit of like self-doubt, like, is this from me? Like I knew intellectually it wasn't, but I was feeling, is this from me? And I've fought through it, and literally everyone I've worked with in my career has expressed interest in working with me again, and a lot of them have said that it was a really positive experience to work with me. I'm good to work with. That's that's not a huge number of people, because I've largely worked solo, but I've worked with visual artists, I've worked with musicians, I've worked with writer, I've worked with other game developers, I've worked with event organizers. That's like, when you look through it, it's actually, even as a solo indie career, there's actually a lot of people, and like also people I've worked with outside of the professional arena. Yeah, I'm compassionate, considerate, very conscientious, very patient, forgiving. Like, when things were going complicated, I put a lot in to trying to make it work, and yeah, I could feel like I wish I'd just given up at the first sign of trouble, but like I appreciate seeing myself that no, I really tried to work with people and communicate and find compromises, but only compromises that were possible for me. But I'm not difficult to work with. Yeah. I try to make myself difficult to abuse. That's